Hey everyone, in today's video I am going to review the Huawei Mediapad M5 Lite from the perspective of an artist. Basically, we are going to see how good this Android tablet is when it comes to drawing. Now there are two models of the Mediapad. There is the Pro model, which has better specs, but it's more expensive at US $400 thereabouts. This is the Lite model, which is cheaper at US $300. So in terms of build quality, it's actually excellent. The screen size is 10.1 inches and it supports a resolution of 1920 by 1200. The screen is very glossy. It's also very slippery when you are using it with the M Pen. The colors look great out of the box. Bezels are uniform on all the four sides, curved corners, and the glass here actually sort of bends with the curve. I'm not sure if you can see it properly, but it's actually rounded here and curves to the back. And this is a pretty thin tablet. The weight is 475 grams, which is reasonable for a tablet this size. The aluminum back is very smooth. This tablet is designed to be used horizontally, so the button placement is different compared to other phones and tablets. So when it's horizontal like this, the camera is at the top, the fingerprint sensor at the bottom, the power and the volume buttons on the side, and on the left side we have the charging port, which is USB-C, and this is the 3.5mm audio jack. We also have the SIM card and the micro SD card slot here. Let me remove the SIM tray to let you have a look. This is the micro SD card slot and this is the SIM card slot. They are separate from each other. So if you need extra storage in the future, you can get your own micro SD card and put it here. If you need cellular connectivity, you can put your SIM card here. These are very useful and convenient features. The placement of the power button, the volume buttons, and the fingerprint sensor on this tablet really throws me off because I've been using tablets for the longest time, and with most tablets, when you hold it vertically, the camera, the power, and the volume buttons usually are at the top, fingerprint sensor at the bottom. Here, the placement is not like other tablets. So I don't think I will ever get used to the placement here. In fact, on many occasions, actually every day, I would reach out for a button to press it, but the button is not there because it's not placed there. Another thing with this placement is sometimes the user interface requires you to have the fingerprint sensor at the bottom. For example, right now I have the fingerprint sensor at the top. I'm going to change the wallpaper. So I'm going to go into settings and change the wallpaper. And notice how it switched the Android system buttons right at the top. So now this is upside down. The tablet doesn't understand that I want those buttons here. So I can sort of rotate it again, and now the buttons are here. So it seems like it doesn't understand that it's in upright position. So the user interface is, the EMUI, the OS on this Android system, it's not that smart. By the way, this system, it's running Android 8. Depending on where this tablet is sold, it may or may not come bundled with the M Pen Lite or the official Huawei case. Let me just put this tablet in the case to show you how the case works. So you just slot right in. The case is pretty high quality, and when you open it up, you're supposed to place the tablet like this. This part here, this doesn't go to the back like this. It does, but it's not, there are no magnets to lock it in position. So usually I place it like this where it's more sturdy. This is the M Pen Lite that supports up to slightly over 2000 levels of pressure sensitivity. This pen is different from the M Pen Pro, so I don't think you can use the Pro pen with the Lite tablet or the Lite pen with the Pro tablet. Now this pen is powered by this battery that is removable. It's a battery with 4 A's. The battery life, if it's like other styluses, should be able to last from 6 months to a year. Build quality of this pen, it's very solid. I think this is probably made of metal. I like the matte surface texture. That's the tapered pen tip. It's a hard surface tip. I don't think you can replace this. I've tried unscrewing this, but there's no way for me to unscrew this. The processor used here is the Kirin 659, which is an average processor, so sometimes there is some lag when it comes to user interface actions, things like scrolling around web pages, loading web pages, clicking the button, waiting for the action to happen. Sometimes there is that slight split-second delay, which makes you feel out of sync. So for example, I'm going to rotate this tablet right now. You can see how much time it takes to actually change the rotation. So it's that split-second delay that feels a bit out of sync. You may think that it's not a big deal, but sometimes it does matter. So one of the most common experience I have is sometimes I will click a button and nothing happens. So I will go and click the button again, and as I reach for the button the second time, the action would happen. So the delay, it's sometimes quite noticeable. I'm not sure if it's because of the RAM. This tablet, by the way, has 3 gigs of RAM. The internal storage is 32 gigs. They have another model with 64 gigs of internal storage and 4 gigs of RAM. And this delay issue, it's more prominent, more observable when you have more apps open. When it comes to watching videos, for example, right now, when you are just watching video, you're not going to be clicking a lot. I think it's a fantastic tablet. Just that sometimes there is a slight delay. But all of that can actually be forgiven because the price of this tablet, it's really price competitive. All right, let's draw something now. I'm going to test out some apps. Let's start with Painter. Now this pen, it's actually very slippery on this glass surface, so you might actually want to consider getting a matte screen protector to get a bit more friction so that you can have more control while you are drawing. But the matte screen protector, of course, is going to affect the color and the contrast of the screen. All right, let's draw something very quickly. So pressure sensitivity works pretty well. I can get thin to thick transitions pretty easily. Now the drawing performance really depends on the app that you use. So for some apps, you're going to notice more noticeable lag, but for certain apps like this, it seems to be quite responsive. There is very little gap to no gap between the glass surface and the LCD screen below. So there is no gap between the pen tip and the line that you draw. Now as I draw, do notice that there is some slight delay, some input lag. Palm rejection works most of the time, but occasionally you will still get some stray strokes. For example here. Now the slipperiness of the screen really affects how I draw because it's really very slippery. This tablet and pen combo may be good for some quick sketching. The thing that really bugs me is the input lag. So sometimes when I'm drawing, the line would actually trail the pen tip by quite a bit before it catches up. Pay attention to the gap between the line and the pen tip as I draw quickly and slowly. And now slowly. So even when I'm drawing slowly, there is a gap. The input lag does make the drawing process feel a bit less responsive and instantaneous. This is more noticeable when you compare it to the M5 Pro. But at the price that this tablet is selling at, I think I can accept that compromise. The next app we will try is Autodesk Sketchbook. So this is how much time it takes to launch the app. It's pretty fast. And now I'm going to test for diagonal line jitter. Notice as I move the pen tip close to the screen, the cursor appears. That's because this is an active stylus. There is hover mode when you move the pen close to the screen. So I'm going to draw some diagonal lines very slowly and see if there is wobble or jitter. And this line, it looks quite straight. The line thickness is not that uniform, most probably because I'm not able to apply a consistent pressure when I'm drawing so slowly. But this sort of performance is actually quite good. Most stylus would actually suffer from this sort of jitter line. But here you can see it's pretty respectable performance. The only issue I see here is when I'm drawing, I can actually see the lines come out bit by bit because of the input lag. There are some curves. There is pressure as well. Notice there are some jitter at the edge of the lines. So it's not that smooth. If you want smoother lines, you can draw faster. Alright, let's draw something very quickly, this time with Sketchbook, Autodesk Sketchbook. So as I'm drawing, I can definitely see the jitter. So drawing performance really depends on the app that you use. And even though I'm drawing pretty quickly here, I can still see that jitter is affecting my lines. So drawing performance, as mentioned, it really depends on the app that you use. And notice the stray strokes. So palm rejection, well, sometimes it's not that flawless. So the next app that I have here is Upflow. And here I can definitely see that the lines, they have less jitter. The lines are smoother here. So drawing with this app, it's definitely a more satisfactory experience compared to drawing with Sketchbook, which by the way is a pretty good app, just that on certain tablets the performance is not that great. Now the main issue I have with this tablet is sometimes the lag affects my art. Sometimes it's actually the very slippery screen. So if I draw a bit too fast, sometimes my pen would actually slip because it's so slippery. So this app, I think it works pretty well. With Artflow, I'm mostly able to get the lines to come out the way I want them to. So that's great. This is also pretty responsive. It looks like I have some stray strokes again. So when you are drawing, you have to check for such stray strokes because let's say I have an artwork here and I will continue drawing here, and half an hour later I realize that the stray stroke is over my initial artwork. That's going to be very difficult to correct. Artflow is quite an enjoyable app to work with. Notice I had to tap 3 times in order to fill this with color because the first 2 taps the tablet did not register the pen. So that is one issue that I face occasionally. But overall, Artflow is a pretty responsive app and a pretty enjoyable app to work with. The navigation here is quite fluid with Artflow, but this performance again depends on the app that you use. With certain apps, you're going to see the lag. And now I'm working with Adobe Sketch. This app looks like it's quite responsive. And while I was drawing the diagonal lines, I didn't see any jitter, so that's great. Now notice the gap here. The pen wasn't recognized again. To avoid that problem, I would draw a bit slower. So the drawing performance of Adobe Sketch, it seems to be quite good. It's pretty responsive. The diagonal lines, they don't have jitter. And so far, I don't have any issues with stray strokes. So that's great. Drawing experience here, it's also very nice. Why are there two stray strokes there? My palm wasn't even there. This is pretty fluid performance with Adobe Sketch. Now earlier on I mentioned you cannot remove the pen tip, but because the glass is so slippery, there is no friction. There is no textured surface to wear off the pen tip, so this may actually last longer than I expect. The last app I want to show you is Mediapad Paint Pro. This is one of my favorite apps on iOS, Windows, and Android. This is free, but it's ad supported. Drawing performance seems to be alright. I can definitely see some input lag, so as I am drawing, the lines will actually trail the pen tip for that little split microsecond. It's noticeable, but it's not like super irritating. If there is too much lag, it's going to be a very frustrating drawing experience. So this performance that I'm looking at right now, this is actually good enough for me. Also, you have to once again consider the price of this tablet. And I think for the price, for the affordable price, a lot of things can be forgiven. So if you want to draw on this tablet, you can definitely do so. Let's see if there are any diagonal line jitters. So this seems to work fine. It could be a bit more responsive, but this is still quite alright performance. The navigation here, it's smooth, but it's not as fluid compared to some of the earlier apps that I have shown you. So let me show you some other sketches that I have drawn with Mediapad Paint Pro. By the way, the brightness of this screen is actually quite good. I have a huge window at the side with strong sunlight coming in, and this screen is now at 70% brightness, and this is pretty bright. And the colors, they look great. Overall, the pen is actually quite accurate. So sometimes when I need to draw a bit slower, that's when I need more accuracy. So the lines, they are still quite smooth, so that's great. So this app works pretty well, just that it does have some lag. Alright, to conclude, let me just list out the pros and cons. For this 10.1-inch screen, the colors, the contrast, and the brightness, they are fantastic. This is a very competitively priced tablet for its build quality for this sort of screen. The audio quality is excellent, so those are the pros. For the downsides, there is some lag when it comes to the user interface actions. There's some lag when it comes to drawing with certain apps. Palm rejection doesn't work perfectly all the time, so when I'm drawing, sometimes I see stray strokes, which can be troublesome to get rid of later on. While the screen is good, it is very slippery, so that does affect the drawing experience. The last thing is, sometimes when I'm tapping on the screen, either with the pen or with my finger, the tablet doesn't register my tap, so I have to tap again. So those are the downsides. Oh, the last thing that I almost forgot to mention is the battery life, which is fantastic. This can probably last around 7, 8, or 9 hours, so battery life is really fantastic. Overall, despite the downsides, this is actually a tablet that I can still recommend because of the competitive pricing, especially if you can find this tablet bundled with the M Pen Lite. I mean, the drawing experience may not be excellent, but it is definitely more than good enough, especially when you use the right apps. As a media consumption device, I would rate this 5 out of 5 stars easily. As a tablet for drawing, well, let me just say that this is a good inexpensive tablet to get you into digital drawing. And that's all for my review today. If you have any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Bye!